Hello, everybody. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for tuning into today's Your Author program from Facebook and YouTube. I'm Vivian Bird, the Librarian 3 from the Exploration and Creativity Department of Los Angeles Public Library. And I'm here with my colleague, Shirley Lee she is the Children's Librarian from the Lincoln Heights branch of Los Angeles Public Library.
It is our pleasure to host the Your Author series today. We want to take a moment to thank our generous donors, the Lenore S and Bernard A Greenberg Fund and the Library Foundation, for helping the library bring these amazing author and illustrator programs to all of you. Before we get started, please feel free to share your thoughts, comments, and questions using the comments option on Facebook and YouTube at any time. Also, please email ecdept@lapl.org to be entered into an opportunity drawing to win Suzie Hicks' book, Zaina the Great and the Giant Plastic Monster. And the email address is below.
Thank you, Shirley. Now let's dive into today's program. Join us is producer and TV host Suzie Hicks. Suzie has won the Outstanding Television Personality and Outstanding Radio Personality EV Awards. She is a dedicated climate change activist who works with PBS SoCal to produce entertaining and educational science content for early learners. She lives in Los Angeles with her turtle son, Durbus, and I hope I pronounced it correctly, and spends most of her weekends protesting for climate change, reforms, and hiking without enough sunblock. Sounds like me. Hi, Suzie. Thank you for joining us.
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited to be here.
We're so happy you're here, too. Thank you for taking the time to be here. And we can't wait to learn and know more about you, your creative process, and also your work in bringing to life this book, Zaina the Great and the Giant Plastic Monster.
You got it. You got it.
Yes. It's a little hard for me, but I'll get used to it. So since we have your book here, would you like to read a little bit about just read some content from your book?
Absolutely. Yeah, I'd be totally happy to. So this is Zaina the Great and the Giant Plastic Monster. And this is actually based on a real kid. Her name is Zaina. She was one of my students. And we worked together to make this book happen. So if you're out there, Zay, how's it going? So we are going to read just the very beginning and the very end of the book to talk about Zaina the Great and the Giant Plastic Monster. So this is the inside cover. If you can see, take a guess at what you think all of those things are on the inside. So then we have the title page, and let's get into it. So I'm going to move a little bit so you can see. In the middle of town, on a small curvy road, in a house with a roof and a yard with a toad, round the gate to the left and beyond a few stairs, stands our hero, barefoot, taking in the fresh air. Who is this, might you ask? Who's this fearless young sprout? If we ask, then she'll tell us. I don't have a doubt. I am Zaina the Great, and I'm glad that you're here. I am queen of all nature, a worthwhile career. Let me tell you my favorite of all of her tales. So strap in, buckle up. We're about to set sail. While Queen Zaina was watering her plants and vines, out of nowhere a ring sounded from her hotline. On the line was her pal, Annalise the blue whale. Oh, please, Zaina, we need you. This problem's large scale. All the turtles are tangled, the dolphins are trapped, and my tummy is full of these weird tasting scraps. What on earth could be causing her friends so much harm that they realized the great need to sound the alarm? Right then, Zay knew she didn't have much time to waste, so she tied up her cape and departed post-haste. And so she goes to the beach and she sees the monster, and she meets a crab that tells her all about the ways that plastic can actually travel up our food chain. And so here's the monster itself. It's not very nice looking, really gross and creepy looking. And she goes and she sees her friends who ask her if she needs help. And she says, no, I'm all set. I got it completely by myself. So she goes and she cleans the beach, but that doesn't work. And then she goes and sees that there's a wrapper from a restaurant. So she goes and she talks to the restaurant owner and he goes, I didn't do anything wrong. I'm just doing my job. If you want to change laws, you have to go to town hall. So then she goes to town hall and she talks to this guy who tells her that he does not have time to talk about the environment because he has a lot of other things going on. And so frustrated, Zaina ends up going and fighting the monster herself. And I wonder if you can guess how that goes for her. So she tries to fight the monster, doesn't go well, but I'll start back up here. She struggled, she wiggled, she cried out in fear, but the monster just grinned, knowing no one could hear. As she sat in the trash, Zaina felt very small, and she thought, am I really so great after all? She quite nearly gave up, and she sighed with exhaust. But right then, when it seemed like all hope had been lost, all at once came a splash, and to Zaina's surprise, she then spotted her friends right in front of her eyes. They all yanked her away from that slippery trap, and they swam away to safety right on Annie's back. So she thanked them and hugged them all twice just because they had saved her. But wait, how'd you know where I was? We were trailing behind you, been there this whole time. We all followed you here, but avoided the slime. All these problems have layers. It takes more than one. You've inspired us to help, so we'll get the job done. Because you're Zaina the Great, and you're never alone. We can fix this together and clean up our home. So then Evan marched up to the fisherman's shop and showed Willie the ways he was able to stop his pollution of oceans of seas far and near through compostable packaging and fishing gear. Meanwhile, B sorted through tons of paperwork stacks, and the city official provided the snacks as they drafted a bill that would soon start to ban all the single-use plastics they found in the sand. And then Kate and some pals gathered round on the beach to clean up all the garbage that was in their reach. And the volunteers dove for the trash that had sunk. And that monster, at last, the beast finally shrunk. And it shrunk and it shrunk and it shrunk on and on. So by morning, the villain was practically gone. Then from somewhere downtown, there came forth a great cheer from a large crowd of people. And we could all hear, I am Zaina the Great, and these here are my friends. We defeated the monster. So that means the end. Just kidding. Even though we succeeded in beating the beast, all the plastic we waste has just barely decreased. But together we'll team up, both grown-ups and kids, so that what has been done slowly can be undid. There are days when it feels like no one gives a hoot and that nature is ignored by those dudes wearing suits. But have faith, we've got voices, so don't lose your grip. If you want to help out, the next page has some tips. And then right here are some facts about plastic pollution and then plastic reduction tips that you can do at home, at school, and at work. And then it has our website here where we're developing some curriculum where you can talk about plastic pollution at home or in your classroom. And then it shows our partners who we're partnered with for the book. And so that, my friends, is Zaina the Great and the Giant Plastic Monster.
Awesome. I think that book is so inspiring. I can actually see that, we can push this and introduce to see them using this in the classroom as part of the curriculum. It's very inspiring in a lot of ways. It will probably get a lot of kids really want to gear up and do something more.
Yeah, we've had some students already make some protest signs after reading the book, which is very cute.
That's awesome.
That's awesome.
I love it.
Yeah.
Cool. So Shirley and I, we have some questions for you. We just want to know a little bit more about your creative process. So here comes our questions, and I'm going to start, okay?
Go for it.
So my first one for you is, what allows you to get your book written, illustrated, and published and distributed?
That's an amazing question. They say that it takes a village to raise a child, and it also takes a village to publish a book. So the way that Zaina the Great came about was that I was a preschool teacher, and I was working at a preschool, and I met Zaina herself. And I had already had a kid's book about environmental activism brewing in my mind. It was going to have a different title. And then Zaina, during one of our science lessons, just like whispered under her breath that she was like, I'm the queen of nature. And I was like, what did you just say? I'm the queen of nature. And immediately it was set in stone. And so all of this is incredibly serendipitous. So the woman that runs the preschool also teaches a class at USC about children's book writing. And since I was volunteering at the preschool, she was like, well, why don't you come take my class to thank you for volunteering at the preschool? So I took her class and we talked about the book, and I said, I want to write a book about Zaina. And so Charisse, who is the head of the program, me and Zaina's mom all worked together to write the book. Charisse's husband copy edited, helped me with the rhymes. So we had our little team right there. And so that's how we created the story itself. And then I joined a lot of Facebook groups for like children's illustrators. And I found my illustrator because she posted some of her artwork in the Facebook group. And as you can see, she's spectacular. She is an incredible illustrator. And I Facebook messaged her immediately and went, hi, I'm Suzie. Please illustrate my art. And so we met on Zoom because all of this took place in the pandemic. We met on Zoom, we Zoomed, we talked, and she was like, this sounds like a great project, I'll work with you. And from early June of last year until October of last year, her and I were just working together on the illustrations, making sure everything happened. But the way that it was all put together, the way that we paid for all of it, is that we conducted an incredibly ambitious crowdfunding campaign. So from August 24th to September 24th, we raised $16,500. And we had a cute little video of Zaina playing in the backyard with the beginning of the title in it saying in the middle of town on a small curvy road. And we just sent that to everyone we knew, everyone we had ever met. People sent it to their friends, people sent it to their neighbors, people sent it to their teachers, anyone that they thought that would be interested in the book. We just sent it out. And we managed to raise the entire amount in less than 2 weeks. Even though we had the campaign open for a month, we ended up raising almost $17,000 in 2 weeks. And we didn't have many incentives either. I was like, I'll make something out of clay if you give me $500. Lo and behold, people that I had not spoken to in years and years were just so happy to contribute, which was so wonderful. But also because this is a book about environmental advocacy, working to reduce our waste. That was a really big part of us creating the book itself. So we wanted to do something that had post-consumer waste printing. It was sustainable. It wasn't going to come wrapped in plastic. And we wanted to use sustainable inks and everything. And that was one of the hardest parts of the book, is that every printing press that was sustainable was 800 times out of our budget. And every printing press that was in our budget didn't do anything to reduce their impact on the planet. So thankfully we found this wonderful, wonderful company called Pure Print. And they were able to print it entirely on post-consumer waste paper. It came wrapped in like old brown paper instead of plastic, shipped sustainably. And also there's carbon offsets to the book. So happy about that. And then I just watched a lot of YouTube videos and figured out how to get an ISBN number, which is this here. I figured out how to get it copyrighted in the Library of Congress, and then made a Shopify site. And now we are almost out. We initially ordered 500 copies to sell, and we have about 20 left. So it's a process, but it's been just the most fun ever. And I'm so happy to have done it.
That's amazing. I mean, actually have a book that's responsibly produced from the paper all the way to the ink and to distribution. That says a lot. So it's really a good example to set for a lot of people who, if we have any writers who's thinking about doing this, if you're watching, definitely consider this route.
It's possible. It just takes a little bit of intention, but it absolutely is possible.
Yeah. And it's so great hearing that backstory. Otherwise, we wouldn't have even known about it. And it's such a great tie into the message of the story too. So we've both read and love Zaina the Great and the Giant Plastic Monster. And we love how Zaina works together with everyone in the community to defeat the giant plastic monster. And how there's a message that we all need to work together to reduce plastic use. So are there any parts of this book that is your favorite or is special to you? And if possible, are there any visuals that you can share with us?
Oh, absolutely. So when I was in college, I wrote my undergrad thesis on children's environmental communication in film. And I'm a huge fan of Hayao Miyazaki. I actually have a tattoo of one of his characters right here. Love Hayao Miyazaki. So I wrote my undergrad thesis on Princess Mononoke and Nausicaa of the Valley of the Wind. And in Nausicaa of the Valley of the Wind, it's this whole like warring neighborhoods that are fighting, but they're all in this like toxic wasteland. And so the big argument in that movie is that all of the people are fighting and they're like, we don't have time to deal with the environment because we have war and we have so many things going on. So that was a really big inspiration for the politician who says, like, we need to deal with the acute things now, but if we don't deal with the chronic issue of climate change or the chronic issue of plastic pollution, it's going to become acute in 100 million different ways. But also the community aspect of it was a really hard lesson for me as an advocate for environmental education and environmental justice, because when you hear about climate change and also because of ways that it's marketed to us, like, if you recycle, you'll save the planet. It's all on you, just you, the consumer. Don't ever look elsewhere. Like, it's just you. As a kid, I was really stressed out all the time about it because I thought I was killing the planet myself. And then I also thought I was responsible for saving it completely on my own. But then as an adult, when I moved to LA and I started working with organizations and finding different people, I realized that it can't be just you, because you'll drown in the anxiety of it all. You'll drown in the fear of feeling like you're so responsible all the time and that you're constantly failing. But there are so many people that are here to help. And that's the reason that Zaina, she like refuses the help at the beginning, because she's like, no, it has to be me. And a lot of American storytelling, it's very much like one hero, one villain. Hero does everything they can to conquer villain, and then villain dies. And that's not really how climate change works. It's like this intricate giant storm cloud of 100 different things, and one person can't just charge bravely into the storm cloud. We all need to do our part. And so Zay kind of realizes that she needs other people to help, and the way that we can change this is by having other people to help. So that was absolutely a story of my own. Also, every single character is based on a real person. So each one of our friends is based on an environmental advocate that I know. So let's see right here. So Evan is a good friend of mine who produces a lot of the content that I make. B is an Indigenous activist, and they live in LA, and they do a lot of work around water rights. And Kate is another environmental activist that lives in Florida and is helping me make a kids show right now about climate change. So there's like little Easter eggs everywhere within the book. But yeah, it's all based in reality of the situation of, you know, how frustrating it is to be a youth activist when no one listens to you, especially when adults don't listen to you. So it talks about, you know, how you feel like you're screaming into the void a lot. And there's actually a very specific moment of in 2018 or 2019, there's an organization called the Sunrise Movement, which is a collection of youth activists against climate change. And they all stormed Dianne Feinstein's office. And they were like, are you going to do anything about climate change? Are you going to do anything? And she basically was like, leave me alone, you small children. You have no idea what you're talking about. You like leave it to the adults, essentially. And it was really frustrating for a lot of youth activists to say, oh, we're not being heard by the people who have power. So a lot of the conversations that Zaina has in the book are her not feeling heard, her feeling unsupported, her feeling like the people in power don't have her best interest in mind. And so she tries to do something about it, but then she can't do it without her friends. So a lot of it is based in reality, but it's just fictionalized, you know, a giant animated pile of garbage.
Yeah.
So Suzie, you already answered my next question. Just what you just explained. So it completely answered all my entire question. So I'm gonna have Shirley just skip over and then ask her question.
Totally.
Okay. So can you share with us about your workspace? What do you think makes your workspace unique? is there anything that has to be present for you to be able to work, like a plant or any stuffed animals or your turtle, Dervis?
That's a great question. That's a really spectacular question. So you're looking at it, really, it's just my bedroom. But as you see, I'll have a lot of stuff up at my desk that, because when I'm writing and when I'm creating, I have to remind myself that creating and critiquing are two separate processes, because I will start to create and then immediately critique. And so I really am my own worst nightmare when I'm creating. I'm my own worst enemy. And so in my space, I have to have a lot of things that combat that negative voice in my mind. And so I have a little sign that says, "Do small things with great love." I have a picture of Judy Garland, because when I was in elementary school, I was Dorothy in The Wizard of Oz, and that was like the first time I found my love for theater and for performing. And then I have a little note that just says, "Yes, period. You can," because my brain will say, "No, period. You can't." And then I have a quote from Charlie Chaplin that says, "You have to believe in yourself. That's the secret." And that really has been the secret for me, because the only thing that ever holds me back is that I feel like I can't do it. And then if I just put my head down and say shh to the thoughts that say I can't do it, then I do it, and it happens, and it's great. And so it's a lot of mitigating my own negative self-talk when I'm creating. So yeah, anything that just like gives me like a little boost of being like, don't listen to the critic in your head. You can just keep going. And then also, as you can tell, I love nature. So I have a lot of plants. I have my background is a mountain range. So feeling like I'm in nature is huge for me. And then also feeling like I can do it is a big one as well.
Yeah, I love those quotes. And I think maybe all of us have a little bit of like negativity. We are our worst enemy, and just having something positive to get you going. I really love that. And I do love that scene behind you with the lake and the mountains. I could just picture myself in that scene. That's wonderful.
I'm going to start printing those quotes. I'll put it on my walls.
Yeah.
So my question for you, next one is, how did quarantine during the pandemic change your habits or space?
For the first couple of months, it rocked my world in a really big way in terms of my creativity, because immediately when quarantine happened, there became this like really stressful pressure on, I don't know if anyone that's watching this can relate, but on creatives, because there was this like meme going around the internet that like Shakespeare wrote King Lear during the pandemic. So there was a lot of pressure for us to like use the pandemic, which is a horrible thing to think about, because people were dying and everyone was losing their loved ones. We're living in fear. And yet you're still beating yourself up about the fact that you're not writing enough, which was just the worst. And so everyone in my creative circle, we were all really stressed out, because we were like, not only are we afraid for our friends and family and our lives, we also are stressed about the fact that we're not producing enough content, which was awful. And so I, for the first couple of months, because Zaina the Great was finished before quarantine, the book itself, and then we were like heading towards finding an illustrator, but then quarantine happened, and I just stopped for about 2 months, and I kept a quarantine journal of like day 3, day 70, day 80, and I made it to about day 90 before I fizzled out of that. I was like, I can't, because at the beginning we thought it was going to be 2 weeks, and we were like, whoa, 2 weeks, this is crazy. What a weird story we're going to have. And then 2 became 5 weeks, and then that became 6 months, and then we're still in the pandemic, really. And so once I realized it was kind of going to be a marathon, not a sprint, that's when I settled back into it. And I had to really just, specifically about this book, I had to really sit down with myself and say, are you going to finish this year? Because I had put it on my website that it was coming in 2020. And then May of the 5th month of 2020 happened, and I had done nothing for the book. And I had to really sit with myself and say, is this a 2020 project or is this a 2021 project? And I said, I would really like this to be a 2020 project. And so thankfully I have a mentor in the children's media space. And she basically was like, do it. And I was like, okay, I will. And so we got the thing, and we ended up starting to sell like late November, which was perfect for Christmas. And we just finished out the year. But the pandemic has made my work incredibly different, because instead of going out and working at a coffee shop or working at my job in person, I'm in my room all day, every day. And I'm either, sitting at my desk, rolling around on the floor, typing in my bed like this, or, but it gave me a lot of time to reflect on the storytelling that I want to do, and the person and advocate that I want to be. And I think that was really powerful, because if you just create without reflecting on the lens that you're creating through, you could create something harmful. So specifically as a white person, I needed to step back and say, is this something that I want to do? Is this something that I'm centering myself in? Is there a way that I'm imbuing white supremacy into this project? And so it was nice to take that step back, instead of being like, just push forward, push out the product, taking a step back and saying, is this going to be harmful or not? And so working with Zaina and working with her mom, we found a way that it would be beneficial. And so Zaina gets a cut of every book that we make, and it goes towards her college fund. And so through that, it's an equitable decision, instead of just a white person writing a book about a Black child and capitalizing off of it, which would be awful. So yeah, quarantine gave me a lot of time to reflect and freak out a lot. If that answers your question.
But you pull it through, and you have that book out in the timing that you wanted it, so it worked out perfect.
Thank you.
So is there someone you think about for your work, or is there a specific target audience or person? When you wrote this book, did you know that it would be specifically a children's book?
That's a really great question. Everything that I do is, that's a lie. It's not everything that I do is kids media. I definitely do love writing content for adults as well, but I think it's an underexplored space to talk to kids about environmentalism, and to talk about environmental degradation, climate justice, and pollution, because it's something that we don't really know how to talk about. And that's why I've dedicated my career to it, because if you don't have a good intervention point of it, kids are either going to get exposed to climate change through the news, which is catastrophic, and saying deadly heat wave hitting, doing like all of these scary things. There's wildfires everywhere. The Amazon's on fire, but with no solutions. That's just pure media, like pure information, or social media, where it's just an op-ed all the time on social media. And so they can be exposed to misinformation. They can be exposed to climate denial. They can be exposed to a lot of ways, that would scare them into ecophobia, which means that you don't want to engage with climate at all, and you don't want to engage with the environment at all because it scares you. And when kids see something scary, they don't want to engage with that, especially if they don't have any solutions. Or they think it's not a big deal, or they think something completely incorrect that they saw on Instagram. And so I think the power of children's media for climate justice, the power of children's media for environmental justice, is that it allows children to be informed in a way that's healthy, that's productive, and that empowers them to make change in a way that they know how. And so when I create everything that I do, I think of, like the 8-year-olds that are at the climate rallies, the kids that their parents bring them to this giant protest, and they have a tiny sign that says like, I want to have kids, or like, I want to be alive in 50 years. Because it's no joke. It's not something that we should keep ignoring, especially for the future generations. And I think because they aren't given power inherently in our society, that power is in education, and the power is in giving the information that they need to make change. So that's who I think of when I think of the content that I make.
Yeah, that's really wonderful that you made this children's book about all these different environmental issues, because we definitely need more children's books related to these topics.
I hope so. Yeah. But it's important.
Mhm.
So at the end of the book, you include information on plastic pollution and tips on how to reduce plastic use. Did you learn about any new tips to reduce plastic use while working on this book?
Definitely. Absolutely. Because I did, yet again, so much is just stressed on the individual that I didn't want to like give a tiny little tip that's like, switch out one thing and then you're done. That's so much of what we're marketed is like this paper towel brand is going to save the world. And that makes you feel complacent because you're like, oh, I'll buy this green paper towel product and then I don't have to engage anymore because I've done my part. I care. There's a great comedy set. I can't remember who the comedian is, but he comes up and he goes, oh, man, we really did our best. Like we really did our best against climate change. You know, we brought our own grocery bags. We brought our own grocery bags, and so what we thought is like do this one thing, and then everything's going to be fine. Whereas there's so much injustice in the creation of the products that we make, the life cycle of the products, and the disposal of the products that we make. That it's not one thing; it's 100 million things. And so, I think when I was making the tips, the biggest thing that I learned was that I can't give you all of the tips. Especially in a kid's book, I can give you some of them. So like at home, you can swap your entire like bathroom routine into being a completely plastic-free environment. So you can have a shampoo bar, conditioner bar, metal razor, bamboo toothbrush. You can use toothpaste, tablets. Like my bathroom is just like purely plastic-free, which is awesome. But a lot of the single-use plastics that we have is around food. So you know, having your own water bottle, bringing reusable cutlery. I just have it on like a little keychain on my water bottle, so it's not super inconvenient. Having extra Tupperware in your car, it's just all things that are convenience factor that, you know, you would get plastic. And, you know, straws were really big in the media about like, get rid of the straws, which is amazing. Yes, absolutely, we should get rid of straws, but they only make up a very small portion of the amount of plastic that's in the ocean. So yes, get rid of straws unless you need them. Unless it's an accessibility issue. If you need a straw, absolutely. If you don't need straws, get rid of them. But also don't stop there. That's the beginning. And then so school and at work, you know, bring your own lunch. Make sure that you're packing it in non-plastic things that you're putting it in. But the most important tip that I have is on the bottom, which is this little disclaimer here, which says, it's important to remember that just 6 major companies are responsible for 6 million metric tons of plastic pollution every year. So while we make these small changes in our own worlds, we must also hold institutions accountable for making big changes in theirs. Because if you, for example, if you throw away one plastic bag, that's one plastic bag. But let's say that the grocery store you go to, the chain of grocery stores, they throw away 100 plastic bags every day for an entire year. You saving your one plastic bag comparatively to their like thousands and thousands and thousands of plastic bags isn't going to make a dent. But if you go to the grocery store and you say, hey, I'm not cool with the fact that you're throwing away all of these plastic bags, and they say, you're right, it looks bad on us that we're doing this, and they stop, you just saved so many. But it's hard when you're alone to do that. And so that's why you need community to come help you, because there's power in numbers to get these institutions to change.
I'm glad you brought this up, because there was some of these, I think there's a lot of confusing information out there related to recycling or, you know, responsible consumption. For example, a lot of people think that, well, if I'm using the compostable plastic utensils, like, you know, the cutlery, then it's good, because if I throw it in the trash, it's going to get compost, so it will be fine. But in reality is that not every facility out there, not all the waste management company is able to compost the cutlery that you just threw away, even though it says compostable, because it requires like what 500, 600 degree of heat in order to compost that thing. So there's a lot of these kind of confusing information out there too. That's I think that's also one of the reasons it's kind of hindering people from thinking about to participate. So again, it goes back to, you know, having books of such that really help really kind of educate people and kind of direct people towards the right direction to look for resources.
Yeah, and I totally fell for that too. When compostable packaging came up, I was on board because I was like, yeah, compostable packaging, this is great. And then I realized that it's greenwashing. And so if anybody at home is watching and you don't know what greenwashing is, it's when a company makes something sound way more eco-friendly than it is. So compostable plastic is basically still plastic because it still won't break down if you throw it away, and it's not recyclable. And so if you are presented with compostable plastic versus a reusable option or versus something that's a lot easier, that's a lot easier to reuse, I would go with that instead. So yeah, thank you for bringing that up, Vivian, because you're totally right. And I was on board and I fell for it. And it's really frustrating because you want to be able to trust the communication that you get, where they're like, this is great. Don't worry about it. We're saving the planet. Like, saving the planet is a big, like, hot thing to say now, especially if you're really greenwashing. So if something says that it's saving the planet, odds are it's not. And so, yeah, it's really important to be critical. But then when you're getting fed information from 8 different sources about what's good and what isn't, it's hard to be critical because you don't know what to look for. So great point, Vivian. Absolutely.
Yes.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I've never heard of greenwashing, so that's really great to hear. And just like, we have to do our own research if you know, we want to make an impact and a change. That's awesome. Are there any words of wisdom you can offer any young creative minds? Or do you have any tips on how we can spread awareness of plastic pollution and how important it is to reduce plastic use?
Absolutely. Absolutely. So I read my book at the preschool that I went to when I was a kid, which was a really great moment. But the kids at the end, they were like, how do we write a book? And what's funny is that when I was at that preschool, I wrote a book. And my teacher just laminated it, and then I had it. And I, for my entire, youth, was like, I'm an author because I wrote a book and my teacher laminated it. And that's how it is. Like, you just do it. Just, if you want to do it, just don't think that, oh, you're not legit enough, because there's so many things that are going to, tell you can't. So it's nice to be the person that tells you can. You're saying, yes, I can. I absolutely can do this. And folks love youth created media, because the environmental movement is for the youth. And so if we aren't representing them, we're just, feeding adults' egos. And so I would say to any young creative that wants to start doing this, talk to your friends about it, talk to your teachers about it. The more you talk about it, the more it becomes real. When I was in college, I started an arts festival, and I didn't know anything. I didn't know what I was doing. I didn't know a single thing about a single thing, but I just talked to a lot of my teachers. I talked to a lot of my friends, and I said, hey, I want to do this. I have no idea how to do this, but I want to do this. And once people hear what you want, they want to help you. And so then it ended up happening. And the same thing happened with this book, where I said, hey, Charisse, I want to write a kid's book about climate change / plastic pollution. I don't know what I'm doing. And she was like, all right, let's do it together. So you don't have to be an expert. You don't have to do it. And then also, don't let perfect be the enemy of good, because it's okay if it's not perfect, because nothing ever is. And then for creating change, education is really powerful. So if you have the power in your own community to do like a teach-in, that's actually how Earth Day started. Earth Day started as a series of teach-ins because there was an oil spill in Santa Barbara in 1969, and everyone said, nope, that is enough. We are done with this. And so it started as an educational movement, and now it's the largest secular observation, which means that it's the largest non-religious observation in the world, because people want to learn. So if you want to teach about plastic pollution, there are so many resources from the Plastic Pollution Coalition, Adelita, Clear Blue Sea. Those are all of our partners for the book. They have curriculum, and we're about to have curriculum too, ready to go. So you can just bring it into your classroom and have those discussions with students and with parents, because kids and adults alike can learn about this together, and then they can make their house and their home and their work and their school a more sustainable place to be.
I love how you're so passionate talking about the subject. And really, we're hoping, you know, this program can really inspire all the audiences to really do something and take action.
Yeah.
So this is really, in a way, it's a call to action.
I hope so. Thanks for saying that.
So do you have a project that you're currently working on, or do you have an idea what your next project is going to be?
Yeah, absolutely. So when I was in college, I had a TV show called Suzie Hicks, the Science Chick. And it was basically just to see whether or not I could make a TV show. And we did it, and it was great, and it was a lot of fun in college. And then I got to LA, and I started doing education work, and I found that my niche was really climate education, environmental education. And then I started working at PBS. I started working with other students, and I realized that there are no children's TV shows about climate change. There are no children's TV shows about environmental activism. And so over the last couple of months, I gathered a writer's team yet again. Asked my friend, said, I have no idea, I have no idea what I'm doing. Do you want to help me? And my friend said, yes. So I gathered a team of 6 writers. We had meetings every other week. We wrote a kids TV show. We wrote a song. We got a puppet who is not in my room right now, or else I would tell you. And we created a kids show about climate change. And we're currently in the editing process of it. We're in post-production. And then once we finish, we're going to start pitching at places and saying, hey, we did this with no money. Do you want to give us some money? That would be great. Because I think it's important that there's a kids show that talks about climate change, because I'm heavily influenced by Bill Nye, obviously. My name, Suzie is the Climate Chick, like kind of is a riff on that, but I'm heavily influenced by Bill Nye. I'm also heavily influenced by Steve Irwin, who just talked about his love of the earth and his love of the animals that lived on it. But I'm also incredibly influenced by Fred Rogers, because Fred Rogers did not shy away from any topic. Fred Rogers said, that's a hard topic that children are grappling with. Let's talk about it in a safe and accessible way. And I think that's incredibly powerful, that we can look at something that's so scary in the face and say, yes, we're going to look at this and we're going to talk about it and we're going to give space to students. So the show itself focuses on the social emotional implications of climate change, the way that it affects our anxiety, the way that it affects our lives, but it also focuses on the local heroes and the local solutions. So each episode is in a different location. Our pilot is in LA, obviously. And we talk about the ways that climate change affects Los Angeles and then the people that are doing something about it. So that is hopefully going to be done by September. And I also, in September, I'm going to graduate school for climate science. So I can continue to have a little bit more of a science background, because I come from the entertainment world. So I can get a little bit more street cred talking about climate science. And also this summer, actually in about 2 weeks, I'm heading to Alaska for a month. I'm going on a backpacking trip with a bunch of other teachers, and we're doing an outdoor educator program to learn more about the ways we can communicate about the environment by living in it. So going to be in the woods for a long time this summer, and then I'm going to grad school to talk about climate science. So this is really, it's my jam. I love it. Hopefully other people want to, hear about it and learn more about it, and hopefully something comes of it. But even if it doesn't, it was an incredible experience, and I learned a lot.
Wow, that is a lot of planning, and that's a lot of awesome things you're planning to do.
Yeah.
For me, I can't wait to see that new show you're talking about. I hope
Yes.
I will see that on. I would assume PBS will probably jump all over it. They'll probably say, "Hey, just why don't you try the pilot here?"
Yeah.
I have no idea what's going to happen, but
Okay.
probably
Yes.
comes of it.
We'll keep an eye out for that one for sure, and definitely share with us. I've been following you on Instagram for last 2-3 years, so I will be continue following your Instagram for your Alaska trip.
Awesome. I don't know how much I'm gonna have Instagram in the middle of the woods, but if I do, I'll be on there.
Okay. All right. Thank you. So thank you, Suzie. And now so Shirley and I, we finished our question. So we're going to open up the floors for the questions coming from the audience today.
Amazing.
So let's see what we have. And we have a little elf in the background who's going to help us feed the question. So Shirley, why don't you just start?
Okay, so our first question from Diane, what do you think about wish recycling? That most things we can't recycle, but people don't know the truth. And I think you talked a little bit about it earlier with the composting items and cutlery. So if you can...
That's a great question. Thank you, Diane. Yeah, so wish recycling or wish cycling is when you put something in the recycling bin because you're like, I don't know, I want this to be recyclable. Like, you don't want to put it in the garbage. You know, it feels bad putting things in the garbage because you know it's just going to go to landfill. So you're like, if I put this, yogurt top in the recycling, then maybe it'll get recycled. But what actually happens when you do that is that it like gums up the recycling process and it makes it harder to recycle the actual things. And sometimes you have to throw out the entire bag because there's like some weird filming thing that makes it unrecyclable, which is why out of the 3 R's, reduce, reuse, recycle, the first one is the most important. So reducing the amount of plastic that you use in general is 800,000 times more powerful than recycling, because a fact about recycling is that even if you put it in the recycling bin and even if you put it exactly where it's supposed to go, 90% of it still isn't going to get recycled, which is hard because we feel like we're doing the right thing. We are putting it in the recycling bin, and we are saving the world by recycling. And still to this day, when I tell people that I do environmental advocacy, they're like, "Oh yeah, I started recycling," and I'm like, "God, it's not." Not it, but yes, but you want to validate everyone and say, yes, that's amazing. Continue to do that. There's a lot of other stuff. So I would say, yes, continue to recycle, but really take a second to look at the number on the bottom, because it's usually if it's 1, 2, or 5, I think it's good. But also it's based on your location. So if you've wanted to learn about recycling, just Google your town's name and recycling. So I'm in LA, I'd say LA recycling policy. And then it'll tell you that, like, yes, you can put anything with the little triangle that has 1 in it, anything with the little triangle that says a 5 in it. And then other than that, you have to like call and ask, but they make it so hard to recycle things properly. So if we can transition away from single-use plastics that we would recycle into, more long-term products, that would be the ideal. But for now, it's just the pressure's on us to every time we have something that we throw out to be like, can I throw this away? And I get those questions all the time. It's like I'm a doctor and people are like, what's this wrap? And they're like, what? Is this recyclable? And I go, I don't know. But so reducing and reusing is way more powerful than recycling. But just Google and it helps a lot in your ability to feel confident when you're recycling.
Yeah. I just want to chime into that one too. So I was having this really horrible frustration with recycling because just like you, I'm like having trouble figuring out. My husband always asks me, can I throw this in the trash or do I throw it in a recycle bin? And I have to look at it, stare at it for like 2 minutes that I don't know. So then I just take it to, I have to go Google it. And now I found out pretty much all the chip bags that you have, they're not recyclable. Even though you wash them, they're dry and clean. They're not recyclable. And all those like to-go boxes, the plastic boxes, a lot of cities, their waste management, they don't take them either. So you have to literally try to find out which city probably would take them, or it's like you said, it's there's so many hurdles just to frustration, just try to do the recycling. So like you said, I'm trying to find ways to reuse all the stuff now so I don't have to deal with that.
Yeah, because when you use something, it is no longer single use. And you're cutting the amount of stuff that you would use in half just by using it again one time. And also, for people that are feeling really frustrated, it becomes easier once you're like, I'm going to start cutting out plastic. You're like, this is hard. And then it gets easier. And one thing I would recommend if you are, stressed about plastic, you want to start using less, there's a challenge that's created by a really cool woman in Perth, Australia called Plastic Free July. And it's just, you try not to use single-use plastics through the month of July. And July is in 5 days. So if you were looking to try that challenge, it's a good time to start.
Thank you for the reminder.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So we have one more question for you coming from the audience. Let me make sure I have it right. So your book offers a great message. Are there any organizations that you can recommend for people to check out?
Oh yeah, absolutely. In LA specifically, there are so many wonderful, wonderful organizations that I've been working with. So there is Surfrider, which is does a lot of plastic reduction organization. There's 5 gyres. There's the Plastic Pollution Coalition, Algalita, Clear Blue Sea, and I know there's 100 more. But so those are all based on plastic. So Surfrider, 5 gyres, Plastic Pollution Coalition, Algalita, and Clear Blue Sea. Plastic Free July is another one. That's an organization. They actually came and spoke in LA right before COVID, which was very cool. And then if you're talking about climate change, climate justice, the organizations that I'm specifically a part of are Extinction Rebellion, the Sunrise Movement, and the Climate Reality Project. And those are and each of those, if you're tuning in from somewhere other than LA, every single one of them has local chapters. So there are chapters all over the United States, and I think beyond for Extinction Rebellion. So Sunrise Movement, Extinction Rebellion, Climate Reality Project. Those are the ones that I'm a part of, and I do work for. So love them.
Awesome. Make sure everyone, if you're watching, take notes of all these organizations and start checking them out on Facebook or YouTube. I think they're all on there. At least they're on Facebook. Okay, so I think
oh, you go.
Go ahead. No, go ahead. What were you going to say?
Following things on Instagram and Facebook makes it a lot easier to start thinking about it every day. So follow those organizations, and then you'll start thinking about it because you'll see it on your feed. Definitely a tip for people getting started.
Yep.
Yeah. Awesome. As you were listing all these organizations, I was thinking, okay, I have to go back to this recording later on and just write everything down.
I love it.
All right, I think we're going to move on to the rapid fire question part.
Okay. So the last thing we're going to do with Suzie is this or that. So this is just for fun, and it allows us to learn a little bit more about you, and also plug in some tips that hopefully viewers can think about, ways that they can reduce plastic use too. So I'm just going to ask you some quick questions and 2 options, and you can just shout out which you prefer. So our first item is reusable cup, a plastic cup or a reusable cup.
Oh, the cool LA Public Library reusable cup, for sure.
Awesome. Would you prefer reusable plastic container or the pop-up reusable containers?
Ooh, the pop-up ones. They're so easy to store. I love those.
Exactly, yeah. And you just pop them back in and put it back in your purse. Paper straws or metal straws?
Metal straws, because you can use them 100,000 times and they still don't go to waste. So yes, metal straws for sure.
Exactly. A glass water bottle or metal water bottle?
I would go with metal water bottle because I drop things a lot. I love my metal water bottle. I bring it everywhere.
Mm-hmm. And one last thing, paper napkins or reusable cloth napkins?
Reusable cloth napkins. Just put a little bucket in your kitchen and you toss them in there, toss them in the wash. You don't even have to worry about the gunk all over them.
Yeah. I just started with these too, so I really love them, and I just found myself using so much paper napkins at home. So these are wonderful.
I'm so glad. That's awesome. I'm so glad that you did that.
So that was fun. Thank you so much, Suzie, and everyone who joined us today. We hope you enjoyed this conversation with author Suzie Hicks. And we know many of you will be kicking off the 4th of July holiday weekend early. So your author program will skip a week, and we look forward to having you back with us on Friday, July 9th at 4 p.m. to meet young adult author Samira Ahmed, who will be discussing her book, Internment. Samira is a New York Times bestselling author, and her prose has been featured in publications such as Jaggery Lit, The Femme, and Claudius Speaks. After attending the University of Chicago, she spent time as an English teacher, and as a nonprofit professional, she helped create 70 small high schools in New York City and secure billions of dollars in funding for public schools. Samira currently resides in Chicago, where she reads, writes, and hunts for the perfect pastry. And once again, those attending the virtual program will have an opportunity to win her free book.
Awesome. So now I'm going to wrap up, but before we do that, we hope that you all have already joined our summer reading challenge. If you haven't, make sure you go to lapl.org/summer to register. There is also an easy free app called Bing Stack where you can register, and you will be able to use that to track your reading time too. And if you are looking for something fun that will get you out of your house with your family, get you to move around, to explore nature around your homes or neighborhood, make sure you join LA Bio Blitz Challenge. We really need your help to photograph and share your observations of wild species of animals, plants, and insects on an app called iNaturalist. Your participation will really support our city's effort in protecting wildlife and their habitats. And the best part is you can actually start today. Again, just going to the website lapl.org/bioblitz, or you can pick up a game card. Let me see if I can have the actual physical game card to show you. So here is the game card. Here's the game card, and here's the backside. Okay, you can pick up the game card at one of the opened LA Public Library branches, and you can start from there. And that is all we have. And we hope to see some really cool observation photos coming from you.
Definitely. So thank you again, Suzie, for being here with us. And thank you all for attending our virtual Your Author program today. And we will see you on July 9th. Goodbye, everyone.
Bye.